Hello and welcome to my Soul Experiment YouTube channel. My name is Anna, and the purpose of this channel is to have somewhere for me to share my investigations and findings around what I believe to be God's greatest design, the human soul. So firstly, I'd like to give you a wee bit of background info about myself. I was an atheist until about 6 years ago, mainly because growing up in my family, religion or faith was very much frowned upon. I think this was because it wasn't thought of as being pragmatic or logical. So I grew up very much thinking that believing in God was stupid. And I carried this arrogance and judgment with me for a long time into adult life. But what my family did have faith in was firstly, that emotions are a bad thing. And secondly, what gives people worth is what they achieve and how they look. And it was kind of at school that my atheist beliefs became solidified because I just really loved science. And science and faith were taught of as being mutually exclusive. So you could have one or the other. And also, the concept of survival of the fittest very much aligned with what I'd learned at home. Be good at life and you'll be okay. But I got to my late 20s and I was exhausted from living life this way. I'd made a lot of very bad decisions. I had cheated, murdered, lied, stolen. But from the outside, people would probably say that I looked like a happy success. And at the time, I wasn't aware of the scope of the damage and the effect it was having on my soul. But all I knew is that I was hurting and I was hurting others and I didn't want to be doing that. And basically, I wasn't happy. Life definitely wasn't getting better and I was dissatisfied. So, off the back of this pain and dissatisfaction, I started researching and investigating emotions and psychology. And eventually, I found some answers in the last place that I would have expected. So, in this video, I'm going to answer 3 questions. Firstly, what has brought about this big change in beliefs? Secondly, what are my plans for doing soul experiments? And thirdly, why is the topic so important to me? So, firstly, how has a camera shy atheist ended up with a YouTube channel about the soul? I can assure you I am as surprised as you are. But it all started about 7 years ago when a friend shared some videos from the Divine Truth YouTube channel, which has thousands of hours of free talks about God, love, and truth. And these are presented by Jesus and Mary. Now, I had a lot of blocks to the idea of God, but I did trust my friend Bex, who had shared the videos, and she was telling me that these talks were different. So I started listening out of curiosity, but I definitely had suspicion and judgment. But what I discovered was the concept of a loving God presented so logically and with so much detail, but without an attached religion. And it was just fascinating to me. Now, of course, naturally, I did think the claim that they were making about being Jesus and Mary, and this is the couple from the first century, not the mother and son. I thought this was wild. I wasn't offended by it because the concept of Jesus didn't mean much to me personally. But the thing that bothered me the most was mainly the many accusations online that Divine Truth was a cult. I was worried about that because cults have a bad rep, and the idea of exclusive groups or communities never has and still really doesn't appeal to me. But when I did eventually give them and their content the time of day, it quickly became very clear that there was no rules, there was nothing to join, and they did everything for free. So the question of it being a cult was very much a moot point. They just seemed to be two honest, kind, sound people who were very in love with each other and very passionate about what they teach, which is always extremely endearing and refreshing. And I was like, wow, not only did they know an insane amount of information, which they presented with like inexplicable ease and clarity, but what they were saying was hitting my heart, and I was surprised at how much it was moving me. So naturally, I was compelled to learn more. And just to give you a snippet of context, Jesus and Mary are also known as A.J. Miller and Mary Luck. And their story is that they've spent the last 2,000 years living in the spirit world, learning more about love and God, and that they've made the choice to come back to earth to share God's truth. My thoughts on which at the time were like, highly improbable, but not impossible. I couldn't rule it out. Who was I to say? And for me, what I feel is at the center of what they teach is the concept of the human soul, how it functions, God's design for its experience, which with my love for design, I was just like, man, this is so cool. So yeah, that was something I was very interested in and still I'm very excited about, hence starting the channel. But another thing that's very much at the center of the teachings, or probably is the center of the teachings, is that every soul has the potential to have a direct personal relationship with God, which they say is something that is incredibly comforting, powerful, and healing. And they kind of suggest that God is our true parent who has an infinite amount of love for us. And yeah, they're a bit like, this is true. Why wouldn't you want to have a relationship like that in your life? And like I said, this is kind of the crux of what they want people to know, is that the potential for this relationship exists. So fast forward 7 years, including many hours of listening and experiments with the principles that they teach. And I've gathered enough evidence to say that I believe them. Because not only is there no other logical explanation for their knowledge, but I've also gotten to know them a bit over the years, and they are just the two most spectacular people I've ever met. I didn't know humans had the capacity to love in the way that they do. And they do it whilst just being so real and down to earth and pragmatic and like normal. So I don't listen to them or believe them because of who they say they are. I listen because of how they act in the world. And I believe the only explanation for this is who they are. So it's kind of like a proof is in the pudding kind of thing. And yeah, I just want to say, like, from the bottom of my heart, if you want to learn about love and heal from your traumas and have the potential of connecting to God to help you through what is a really hard process, then these are just the best people to learn from. And I can't actually put into words how grateful I am for their work and their help. Now, I am going to make a video soon to chat about Divine Truth as an organization in more detail, because it's a big claim. It's something that people have a lot of issues with, and the cult bandwagon seems to be something that people frequently jump on, and they just come to completely the wrong conclusions. And there's a lot of lies that have been spread about my friends Jesus and Mary. So yeah, I'd just like to clear up some of those accusations and give my take on it all in a bit more detail. So now that you understand a bit more about how I came to believe that the soul exists, this brings me nicely to my second question. What are my plans for doing soul experiments? Now, just to clarify, I'm not linked to Divine Truth in any way. This is very much an independent project. And my plan with this channel is to look at what Divine Truth teaches is true about God's design of the soul and create experiments to test these hypotheses and cross-reference my findings with science and with society's current takes on whatever issue it is that I'm investigating. Now, I am also going to include my personal experiences, which is something I never imagined wanting to do, because before I was very happy to keep it safe and cerebral, but I've kind of come to see just how important these are for building evidence and faith, and how much other people sharing their experiences has helped me along the way. Because, it's like when people are honest and vulnerable about what they feel, it often creates the most impactful connection between people. And yeah, that's because that's how we're designed to be. We're 100% emotional beings. And I've definitely felt that my strongest evidence is built up from experience. So I think it's really important to include these. One thing I'm also very passionate about is ethics. So I hope in the channel to present my work in a transparent, kind, and engaging way. And to begin with, I think this will just be in the form of short videos, but one day, hopefully, it could be films or documentaries, which is something I've kind of dreamed of doing for a while. Because other than Divine Truth, documentaries have definitely had the most profound effects on my life. They've inspired me to go vegan and start the business that I currently run. And I definitely believe that sharing truth through film in like a creative and unbiased way can be such an amazing and transformative tool. Now, researching and experimenting is something I've kind of already been doing since my 20s, in particular with diet and exercise and business ethics. And it's very much in my nature to investigate, but for various reasons, I haven't wanted to document or share it up until now. And with regards to the topics I hope to cover, a soul-centric view of the world hits on a lot of issues that are considered controversial. So we're talking abortion, gender, life after death, disease, morality, soulmates and monogamy, and that's just to name a few. And I actually believe that there's already plenty of evidence out there that the soul exists. It's just not like in mainstream education or media. So maybe some of my work's just going to be gathering that information and presenting it in a kind of different way. And I was thinking the other day, isn't it weird that if around 80% of the world believe in God, then why does modern day thinking and conversation deny this? Why do we keep church and state so far apart, like faith is some kind of shameful side hobby? And of course I do understand that there's an element of once bitten, twice shy, because religion has so much evil to answer for and it's done so much damage. But I want to make it clear, I'm not talking about religion, I'm talking about faith, which is a very personal thing, and it doesn't need to involve any external groups. And I think there's just extreme potential for change when we look at the intersection of faith and science and what we can learn from this. Because we are souls, you can't change that fact. So I feel we need to start incorporating this into how we treat each other and how we design our world. So yeah, it's a huge topic, and the goal of creating a full case for the existence of the soul seems like a pretty ridiculous thing to take on, I'm not going to lie. So I am definitely a bit overwhelmed by it all, but this channel is just me taking the first of hopefully many small steps to engage my passions, and it's something I've been avoiding doing for too long now. So yeah, to start with, it's just going to be a passion project that I run alongside my business, which is my full-time job. So finally, the third question, why is this all so important to me? Why go to this effort? Well, for me, the realization that I had a soul and all that came with that has been the single most defining part of my life, because proof of the soul was proof of a creator. And this all led to a really big and hard-hitting wake-up call that I had to take responsibility for all my actions and all of the feelings I was putting out into the world and onto other people. And learning about the soul has also hugely helped me see how much I'd been missing by living so intellectually, because it's these very deep human soul experiences that make life worth living. And like many people, I've just always had an innate desire to make the world a better place, even in my brokenness. And currently in the West, medicine, politics, mental health, economical, educational, and ecological issues, everything's getting worse. And how? How is this possible when given all the tech and intelligence that we apparently have? And I'm certain it comes back to the missing piece of the soul, because you just can't solve problems if you don't know what you're working with. And yes, very much, a lot of the world is still dominated by intellect, and the thought that the answers to everything can be linked back to our brains and correct or incorrect chemistry. End of story. There's no questioning that there might be something causing this imbalance or causing these illnesses and causing our distress. And like I mentioned earlier, I've had a lot of experience of living life in a very intellectually driven way, and I do understand why Stoicism and certain types of meditation and evolutionary psychology and positive affirmations are all becoming more popular. And I'm not saying that logic doesn't have its place and we shouldn't use our brains, but it needs to come alongside love, and we need to have an understanding of the soul. Like, for example, I'm often listening to experts being interviewed on podcasts who have amazing knowledge, insight, and experience. They're incredible. But because people are missing the key element of the soul, it's very rare that the actual root cause of an issue gets identified or understood. And it's even rarer that people know how to fix it. And to me, that's just like, that's what's wild, is that we've got someone with a lot of answers and evidence. And the proof Jesus is providing and the explanations he's giving, they are adding up. I've been investigating them, I've been experimenting them. They're true, they work, and no one's listening. People just mock him because of who he's claiming to be. And I genuinely think it'll be one of those things that we look back on, just like people do on his first century death, and say, shit, like we got that really wrong, didn't we? Like it was there and we ignored it. To be transparent, this hasn't been easy. Like the process isn't easy. I found the personal work of the soul to be the most challenging thing I've ever done, easily ever done. Truth isn't always easy and it's not always inspiring, but being guided to address my own issues and addictions instead of like pointing the fingers at others has turned my world upside down multiple times. I've felt lonely, desperate, completely hopeless, rageful. But when I'm humble to these feelings and I let them overwhelm me, it's always brought about permanent positive change. And that's just the opposite of what we're taught about emotions growing up. Like I've had near miracles happen from getting real with God in a rage room and smashing some shit up and having a good old mentee bee or a mental breakdown and a snotty gut-wrenching cry. And yeah, like I said, that's just, we're taught to do the opposite with our feelings. And of course, I've made mistakes along the way and I don't do the process particularly well. I resist it a lot of the time, but I cannot put into words how rewarding and relieving it has been to finally understand like what the hell this whole life thing is about and how to start being me and loving life again. Because we all have to deal with our darkness sooner or later. And anyone who has worked with me over the years knows how much I love efficiency. So I'm like, yeah, I strongly recommend not putting this soul work off until after you die, and creating like a bigger backlog of damage control that you need to do. And it's not only this, like the more we deal with and the sooner we deal with our issues, the sooner we can be ourselves and connect with our passions. And like, who doesn't want to live a life that is more passion driven? It's definitely like a problem in the world at the moment, isn't it? It's just a lot of heaviness and not enough passion and happiness. And I wish I'd known differently earlier. So if this channel can help anyone else in the way that I've been helped, then that would be so awesome. Like that's definitely a big goal of sharing my experiences. So to summarize, I want to share my passions about God's design of the soul. I want to encourage conversation and problem solving on tricky topics because at the moment, so much of the world is just at war, butting heads with each other when I feel the truth is there for the taking. And I just have a gut feeling that I could do a good job of being an investigator and a communicator with an agenda firmly, but definitely not flawlessly, obviously not flawlessly, grounded in truth and kindness. So I'm taking the scary step to follow this gut feeling. And I think that's something that more of us should try and do, is listen to those little niggles and the intuition and the guidance that we're being given. I don't think that God works in mysterious ways. I believe very strongly in absolute truth. And yeah, I reckon if we just approach problems logically and with no personal agenda, then we could quickly come to the right conclusions. And there's just so many amazing people with amazing skills and talents, and we could create incredible solutions in a world that, is just crying out for them right now. So I hope you enjoy what you hear. I'm looking forward to seeing how this all plays out. I hope you are too. And thanks for listening. Cheers. Bye.